Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ikmal bin Abdul Aziz, and my other friends will make a presentation entitled New Trade Theory. Introduction. As reported in March 1996, support for free trade amongst economies in the United States is astonishingly high at 97%. It has enabled Alan Krueger, in 1997, chief economist at the World Bank during the 1980s, and the chief promoter of the neoliberal Washington Consensus, to engage in a history of economic thought in which the central question became one of explaining why economies should have resisted the charm of free trade for so long, given both its virtues in practice and is certainly within the standard theory of cooperative advantage. Her answer essentially boils down to the idea that otherwise either theorists have made mischief by deploying models of market imperfection without due regard to the stylist fact. In short, for her, if the stylist theory does not support the stylist policies, it is time to get real. However, as will be shown in much of the discussion that follows, the reason trade literature has, within the confines of an evolving neoclassical theory of market imperfection, made great attempt to address at least some of the realities of trade. By doing so, from the perspective of neoliberalism, it has been extremely mischievous, if not troublesome, in view of the extent to which its conclusions have been overruled by the forward march of support for trade liberalization. This paper critically examines the theoretical and empirical ground for trade liberalization. We note that many of the conventional arguments relating to the static and dynamic gains from liberalization are based on fragile theoretical ground. We also show that although new trade theory takes account of some of the complexities international trade, and although the analytical thrust of many models justify intervention, such policy conclusions are rejected even by those at the forefront of these theories on the ground of political economy arguments which do not stand up to careful scrutiny. Finally, we show that arguments favoring trade liberalization are not supported by existing empirical research which generally fail to capture the complex and ambiguous effect of liberalization and openness. And lastly, for the introduction, Section 1 examines conventional theoretical arguments relating to trade liberalization, and Section 2 review recent development in new trade theory. Also, Section 3 examines the empirical research relating to liberalization, dealing with both cross-country research and industry and firm-level studies.
So there are two examples of new trade theory. So the first one is specialization of IT in Silicon Valley. The US, Hewlett and Packard started their computer business. Success attracted more IT firms to that area, not because of any particular intrinsic benefit, but new firms start to get the network benefits of being around other IT setups. So for the second example is globalization has led to increased variety for consumer. So the proliferation of brand clothing labels firms competing in the model of monopolistic competition and heavy branding. So neither UK nor Italy has a particular comparative advantage in producing clothes, but consumers are attracted to the brand image of Italian and British fashionables. Okay, so next is new trade theory and government regulation. So new trade theory suggests that government might have a role to play in promoting new industries and supporting the growth of key industries. So some point to the Japanese car industry in the 1950s, which received substantial government support. Other Asian economies also had some government protection and support. A developing economy may need tariff protection and domestic subsidy to encourage the creation of capital-intensive industry. So if the industry gets support for a few years, it will be able to exploit economies of scale and then be competitive without government support. This is similar to earlier arguments surrounding infant industry. So it's clearly, as in any principal-agent problem, there is a trade-off between knowledge and also motive. So Bennett and Martimo 1997 addressed the issue directly as suggested by the title of their paper. Their conclusion is striking. An attainment of the informationally by constraint social optimum requires a complicated menu of contracts combining per unit subsidies and lump sum transfer. Even more remarkable is the conclusion reached by Crane 1998 to the effect that policymakers may be better off and justified in using trade policy the less information that they have. It is not, however, necessary to engage in trade theory to see why this conclusion arises in the context of imperfect competition. 4. Consider a monopolist who wishes to exercise product discrimination. To do so, customers, including countries contemplating trade policy, must have the knowledge to discriminate products, as is recognized in practice by advertising irrespective of whether genuine differences are created. Without this, monopolists may be forced to rely upon a more Pareto efficient but less profitable strategy and be unable to exploit product discrimination. Nor is this some esoteric point in the context of development where both for welfare and growth, economies are better served by supply to a cheap mass market than to a more profitable elite.
The idea of government supporting new industries is controversial. Problems of government intervention. Many economists say that it is likely to create other problems, such as the government is likely to have poor information about which industry to support and how to do about it. Also, it creates a tendency for powerful vested business interests that rely on state support. This state support may encourage inefficiency in the long term. Next, it will lead to lack of incentive as public sector not receive any of profit incentive to innovate and cut costs, which is different from individuals. Therefore, it can lead to inefficient production. For example, state-owned industries have always been inefficient, overstaffed and produce goods not demanded by consumers. More, it leads to government failure in terms how government intervention can cause its own problem. Government may take decisions for short-term political consideration which lead to inefficient outcome. In conclusion, new trade theory is not primarily about advocating government intervention in the industry. It is more a recognition that economies of scale are a key factor in influencing the development of trade. It also suggests that free trade and laissez-faire government intervention may be much less desirable for developing economies that find themselves unable to compete with established multinationals. Overall, new trade theory addresses the limitation and assumptions of traditional trade theory. New trade theory argues that economies trade and specialize to take advantage to increasing returns and lower costs, not subsequent different in factor in domains that traditional trade theory addresses.